Welcome back to the channel. Drew here, and we are going to talk about what every Turo host should be considering right now, and that is how to recession-proof your Turo fleet. I don't care what the Fed says. We are heading into a recession, and there is several things that you need to do right now to prepare yourself, your business, your financial future to come out of this recession stronger and better than ever. Let's talk about it. Let's jump in. All right, guys, new microphone, so give me some feedback if it's better, worse than before, and we do appreciate that. So I'm going to give you 6 steps, and it's steps you can start taking now. Some of you might be halfway through the process, but step number 1 is to rebalance your fleet. And I talked about this in one of my last videos. Every host should watch it. We are headlong into a used vehicle crash. And in that video, I talk about there's 2 different types of vehicles. There's vehicles that are going to get heavily hit by depreciation and by this crash and this correction. And then there's other vehicles that are not going to get hit at all, if very, very so slightly. And so this is the perfect time. This is time sensitive because you need to be, if possible, you need to be replacing these vehicles for these vehicles. I talk about it in depth in that video, and specifically, potentially trading 3 to 6 year old vehicles and keeping 1 to 2 year old vehicles, new vehicles, as far as that goes, as far as which vehicles are going to take a bigger hit or not. So this is the time to rebalance your fleet. You have a short time. There's many vehicles that if you've had on the platform for any significant period of time, if you have to sell them in the next 6, 8, 12 months, they could be worth $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or more or less because of a used vehicle crash. This is the time to get out of those vehicles. And so that's step 1, is rebalancing your vehicles with the correct type of vehicles that are not going to be hit as hard when it comes to depreciation and the deflationary, this used vehicle bubble that we're in. Step number 2 is, while you're rebalancing your fleet, diversify your fleet. This is a lot of hosts it's okay to find your niche. If your niche is luxury cars, if your niche is economy cars, if your niche is SUVs, whatever your niche is, fine, that works in your area, that's great. When you're starting out in the business and you find something that works, you should stay with that. Don't change what's not broken, right? However, as you get more seasoned in this business, and if you want your fleet to last through a recession, there comes a point where you have to diversify your fleet. And just to give you a basic example, if I have 10 cars in my fleet, then I might want to have two economy vehicles, 2 SUVs, 2 trucks, 2 7 to 8 passenger vehicles, and then maybe 2 luxury or sports car vehicles. And then, depending on your market and your city, you could replace any of those for 2 electric vehicles to substitute. So it doesn't necessarily matter which of the vehicles that you have, and there's other categories I'm not counting, but just to give you an example, when you have a diversified fleet, it allows one type of vehicle, if it gets hit hard in the business and people are not using that vehicle, for example, the luxury vehicles, then they will be using the economy. People would be using the economy vehicles. Or in the wintertime, they might use the trucks or the SUVs more than during the summertime. So by diversifying your fleet, it balances out. And no matter what happens in the market or recession-wise, usually you'll have several categories which you'll have rentals coming in that can really help you float you through some difficult times in the Turo business. Okay? So step 1 is rebalancing your fleet. Step 2 is diversifying your fleet. Step 3 is deleveraging your risk. Deleveraging your risk. And this is where the cash-only people are going to get all excited because they have no risk, right? Okay, well, we'll talk about that later in the video, the pros and cons of that. But step number 3 is specifically for people who have loans, or a significant portion of their fleet is with auto loans. And as you know, if you watch my channel, I'm not against that. I think that's using other people's money to wisely to build out your fleet and your portfolio, and there's some other benefits that come with that as well, is a good thing in moderation and within reason. But step number 3, when we're going into a recession, you need to make sure all of your loans, you have the minimal amount of risk possible. And what that means is part 1 of deleveraging your risk is making sure you have, in any of your loans, you have a minimum of $5,000 of equity position in that vehicle. And now, some vehicles in your fleet, that's easy. It's probably already done. You're already good with that. You have, in this area where vehicles that you purchased have gone up in value, to get $5,000 in equity may not be very difficult. And so that's step 1. Step 2 is making sure you're at minimum 3 months ahead on payments, and those are 2 different things, okay? So equity in your car and being ahead on your payments in your loans are 2 totally different things. As far as getting 3 months ahead, most banks, when you pay extra on your loan, an auto loan, it kind of goes into where you will have less due. So for an example I'll give you, if you have your auto loan is $500 a month, and I recommend paying something like $750 a month. And in the matter of 6 months, as your vehicle's running out, especially during peak season, which in most markets we're in peak season right now, within 6 months, you'll have not only your car paid on time, obviously, but you'll have 3 months of your payments already paid in advance. And this can help you in a position to where something happens to the Turo market or something happens to the economy where you just don't get any bookings. You literally have 3 payments of your car already paid off into the future. I had this happen to me during COVID, and I called a couple of my bigger loans when COVID first hit. And I called them, I said, hey, COVID, blah, 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 trying to get a little bit of and most of all my loans, they said, you don't have a payment due for 2 months, and that can give you some breathing room and put you in a much better low-risk situation. And potentially it could look good on your credit if you're always ahead on your payments. All right, so step number 4 is pay off your highest rate loans. So typically these might be, these are typically the last loans that you got will be your higher rate loans, more because rates have gone up, or as you have multiple loans on your credit or in your business, banks tend to look at it as a higher risk and the rates will get higher. So target your higher rate loans. If you have loans that are 7, 8, 9, 10% or more, start working on paying those down. Once you get all of your loans in those positions of $5,000 minimum of equity position, and then it'll build from there. 3 months ahead on all your payments. Then you target your highest interest rate loans and start paying those loans down. Or if you don't have any higher interest rate loans, for example, I would say a good rate to target is 3.5%. Or lower. If all your loans are 3.5% or lower, and you have $5,000 in equity in your vehicles, and you have 3 months ahead on your payments, I don't think you need to be paying down those loans. In that case, I would be banking up cash. So step 4 is either pay off high interest rate loans, anything 3.5% or higher. Pay debt, and if once you have those, bank up cash, and that puts you in position to step number 5, and that is only purchasing cash vehicles. If you're going to continue to grow your fleet, I think for the majority of Turo hosts, they need to put a pause on growing their fleet until we see what happens at the end of this year. But if you're newer to the business and things are going really well for you and you want to slowly add vehicles to your fleet, I would recommend only purchasing cash vehicles at this time, or no risk vehicles. And when I say no risk vehicles, what I mean is these are hot vehicles that you've already maybe had a reservation or you built out, that once you have that vehicle, you immediately have a massive amount of equity. I'm thinking like the Hummer, the new Hummer that's out, a Ford Lightning, a Maverick Hybrid, Broncos, those type of vehicles that you purchase. You can purchase it at MSRP because you've planned ahead, and those vehicles really have no risk because they're immediately worth substantially more than you're paying for the vehicle. So you already not only have a $5,000 equity in the vehicle, but sometimes $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or more equity in the vehicle. Those are no-risk vehicles, and you should do everything you can to purchase those if you are in a position to do that. So that's number 5, is only adding cash vehicles or no-risk vehicles. Vehicles where you immediately have massive amounts of equity in the vehicle. And that brings you to step number 6. And step number 6 is strengthening your position in the future. Now, if you've been in the Turo business as long as I have, 5, 6 years, you know that the Turo business goes through cycles where I call it a Turo reckoning. And what that means is every 2 to 3 years, you'll have, for 2 to 3 years, you'll have lots of people getting in the business, lots of new hosts, everybody looking for that easy money, everybody, seeing how lucrative the business can be. And there comes a point where there's just too many hosts for the amount of renters. And the last time this happened was at the very beginning of COVID. And that's where a lot of people just literally stopped. Everything shut down for, it was really only about 2, 3, 4 months at a time. But you had a massive amount of hosts that were just not in good position. They didn't, follow any of the steps that I had. Obviously, I didn't put it out yet. But, they didn't follow any of those common sense, some steps of lowering your risk. And they really were in a difficult situation where they had to, sell vehicles while the values of vehicles were crashing. And they had to get out of the business. So this Turo reckoning, it happened 2.5, 3 years ago. It's going to happen again as we go into the recession, as there potentially could be a lot, way more hosts than there was back then. And only the strong Turo hosts are going to survive. And people who have a long-term business model that works, and the people that are not competing in that race to the bottom on pricing, and they just don't have a business model that works long term. Those people will filter out of the Turo business. Only the strong will survive, and the strong get stronger in this business. And so once you follow those first 5 steps, the next step is strengthening your position, your business, strengthening your position in the business. And what that means is keeping relationships with banks, keeping relationships with dealers. It means building your credit. And this is where, the cash-only crowd, if you got 10 cash-only vehicles, after 2 years on the platform, you've got about maybe $35,000 to $45,000 worth in vehicles that are kind of difficult to sell. You're going to be selling them on Facebook. Whereas in my business model, if I've got 10 vehicles, I might have 200, after 2 years on the platform, I do currently have $200,000 to $250,000 in equity in the vehicles. And that puts me in a great position, because going into a recession, banks get extremely strict with their lending. If you remember back in 2007, 2008, man, you had to have only the top tier credit or getting loans for houses and cars. And, as we go into recession, banks are getting extremely tight, just like they were back then. And so only people with the very best credit, only people with massive amounts of equity. So if I want a vehicle like a Ford Lightning or a Hummer that comes out that I think will do well in the market, or a Cybertruck or a Rivian, or a whole different slew of these exciting new vehicles that, are really our Turo home runs. If I'm not building strength and building relationships with the banks and in strong equity positions. So when I have cars with $20,000, $30,000 in equity, and I go to get a loan on a $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 vehicle, most people are not going to be able to get those loans. But because I have $20,000 to $30,000 in equity, maybe I could trade in 2 vehicles to one vehicle. And a bank, if someone's got 800 credit score and they have they have $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in equity, any bank in the world is like, this is a no risk loan for us, and so they'll take that deal. And so that's what I mean about strengthening your position. It's building up equity in your vehicles or building up a cash surplus so you can capitalize on certain vehicles and certain opportunities that other people cannot do, and that's really going to put you, way ahead of the game when we come out of this recession and potentially the Turo market comes back up. So hopefully this is helpful, guys. Give me your feedback. What steps am I missing? What are you doing to prepare yourself, your fleet, for the recession? A Turo recession, and let me hear about it. I like your feedback. I love your comments. Thanks, guys, and until next time, I'm out.